Okay, so this week you guys really flooded our inbox
Yeah,
with this story out of Lancaster County.
absolutely.
A plane crash
Mm-hmm.
that happened on Sunday, March 9th, 2025.
Right.
And
It's a pretty dramatic stuff.
yeah, it's one of those things that just grabs your attention right away.
Absolutely.
So we've got a whole bunch of articles here
Yes.
from Lancaster Online, WGAL, 6ABC, PennLive.com.
Mm-hmm.
And we even managed to get our hands on kind of a preliminary briefing document.
A good summary.
Yeah, just to get a sense of, the basic facts of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to try to do today is take all this information
Right.
and really kind of, pull out the key facts,
Right.
make sure we understand the timeline,
Uh-huh.
and then start to think about, what are some of the possible things
Yeah.
that might have contributed to this.
Absolutely.
But in a way that's not going to completely overwhelm you.
Right.
Because there's a lot here.
There is.
And it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
So the aircraft involved was a Beechcraft Bonanza
Okay.
and
Single engine plane?
single-engine plane.
Yeah.
Seats up to 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of a smaller general aviation aircraft.
Very common.
Yeah, very common.
Yeah.
Often used for personal trips, business trips, that kind of thing.
Right.
And in this case, the plane was scheduled to depart
Okay.
from Lancaster Airport
Mm-hmm.
at 3:15 p.m. last Sunday,
Right.
headed for Springfield, Ohio.
Okay.
So that's the basic setup.
Uh-huh.
But then things went wrong pretty quickly.
Yeah. So let's get into the details.
Okay, so the crash itself,
Yeah.
our sources indicate that it happened
Shortly before 3 p.m.
shortly before 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And the location is pretty significant here.
Really is.
It went down in the parking lot of Brethren Village,
Wow.
which is a retirement community.
Right.
Located about a half-mile south of the airport.
So very close.
Very close.
Yeah.
And, when you think about a plane crashing in a parking lot
Oh, yeah.
of a retirement community,
Scary stuff.
yeah, it's pretty frightening.
Absolutely.
And the immediate aftermath sounds really intense.
It does.
There was a fire that broke out.
Wow.
It ended up damaging a bunch of vehicles,
Yeah.
like a dozen in total.
Wow. A dozen cars.
Yeah. And 5 of them were severely damaged.
Oh, wow.
One report even described it as thick black smoke and raging flames,
I can just imagine.
which, just kind of gives you a really
So if you picture.
vivid picture of what that scene must have been like.
Yeah.
But here's the amazing thing.
Yeah.
Despite all that,
Yeah.
despite the fire,
Nobody on the ground was hurt?
nobody on the ground was hurt.
Yeah.
No structural damage to any of the buildings.
It's unbelievable.
I know, and I think even Police Chief Dwayne Fisher, who was on the scene,
Mhm.
he said, now I'm quoting here, "I don't know if I'd consider it a miracle, but the fact that we have a plane crash where no one on the ground was hurt is a wonderful thing."
That is a wonderful thing.
It really is.
Absolutely.
Especially when you think about how chaotic and dangerous that situation was.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a couple of eyewitness accounts
Oh, okay.
to give us some clues
Okay.
about what might have been happening with the flight.
Yeah.
One witness, Brian Pipkin,
Okay.
reported seeing the plane nosediving
Oh, wow.
after it had been flying at what he said was a low altitude.
Okay. So that's not good.
No, not good at all.
Oh.
And then another witness said that the plane appeared to be struggling.
Struggling.
Yes, struggling to take off.
Oh, wow.
This witness actually said it wasn't lifting off, it wasn't taking up, it was kind of just a steady float, like gliding before it crashed.
Like it couldn't get any lift.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, that already suggests that there were some serious problems with the flight
Right from the beginning.
right from the beginning. So
Yeah.
let's talk about who was on board.
Okay.
Because, obviously in a situation like this,
Yeah.
people are going to be concerned
Of course.
about who was involved.
Absolutely.
So we know that there were 5 people on the plane,
Okay.
and all of them were injured in the crash.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot has been identified as Matt White,
Okay.
and it's important to point out that he is a board member
Okay.
of Venture Jets,
Which is?
which is a local aviation company.
Oh, okay.
But the reports emphasize
Gotcha.
that the Beechcraft Bonanza that crashed
Mm-hmm.
was his personal aircraft,
So not a company plane.
not a company plane.
Gotcha.
And the other 4 people on board were all family members.
Okay. His family.
His family.
Mm-hmm.
So after the crash,
Yeah.
All 5 of them
Right.
were taken to Lancaster General Hospital for treatment.
Yeah.
We later learned that 3 of them were transferred to the Lehigh Valley Health Network's burn center.
Okay.
2 of those transfers were by air ambulance,
Oh, wow.
and 1 was by ground.
So pretty serious injuries, it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like they were in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the other 2 people who were on board,
Right.
they were treated at Lancaster General,
Okay.
and they were actually discharged on Sunday night.
Oh, that's good.
So, better news on that front.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the details of the crash.
Mm-hmm.
We know who was involved.
Yeah.
Now let's start thinking about
Yeah.
what might have caused this.
What are some of the possible factors here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really jumps out from the initial reports
Yeah.
is that somebody on board the plane
Okay.
reported an open door.
An open door.
An open door.
An open door.
While it was in flight.
While it was in flight.
Wow, it's not good.
No, and the pilot actually requested to return to Lancaster Airport.
Okay, so he knew there was a problem.
He knew there was a problem.
Yeah.
And it was serious enough.
That he wanted to come right back down.
Right away.
Right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the communication with air traffic control,
Okay.
which is
Always a key part of these investigations.
always.
Yeah.
So the controller initially cleared the plane to land.
Okay, so they were going to try to come back.
Right.
Mhm.
But then, and this is where it gets kind of strange,
Yeah.
the controller then said, pull up,
Pull up.
pull up.
Like abort the landing.
Yeah, like abort the landing.
Wow.
And apparently there's audio of this exchange.
Oh, wow. So we can actually hear.
Yeah, we haven't heard it yet.
Yeah.
But
I can only imagine.
yeah, it must be pretty intense.
Yeah.
And, thinking about it,
Yeah.
a pull-up command from air traffic control,
Right.
that's usually only given
When there's like a really serious
in
situation.
a really serious situation.
Right.
Like if there's another aircraft on the
Yeah.
runway or
Yeah.
something.
Or an obstruction.
Yeah, some kind of unexpected obstruction.
That makes you think like what was going on.
Exactly what was happening
Yeah.
in those moments.
Yeah.
That made the controller change their instruction
So quickly.
so quickly.
Yeah.
And, we can't forget those eyewitness accounts
Right.
that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where people said the plane was struggling to gain altitude
Right.
and that it was flying low.
Yeah.
So those observations
Yeah.
seem to support the idea
Right.
that something was wrong with the aircraft
Yeah.
very early on.
Yeah. Potentially even before it left the ground.
Potentially even before it left the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously when something like this happens, there's going to
Yeah.
be a full investigation.
Of course.
And the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA,
Mm.
which is responsible for, aviation regulation,
Right. Air traffic control.
air traffic control, all that.
Yeah.
They're going to be involved.
Of course.
But the National Transportation Safety Board,
The NTSB.
the NTSB, they're the ones who are going to be leading the investigation.
Oh, okay.
And the NTSB is an independent federal agency,
Mm-hmm.
and their whole job
Yeah.
is to investigate civil aviation accidents.
Okay, so they're the experts.
They're the experts.
Yeah.
We also saw that the Civil Air Patrol was involved.
Oh, okay.
They helped secure the crash site.
Right, so that nobody tampers with the evidence.
Exactly. Preserve the evidence for the
Yeah.
NTSB investigators.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA,
Really?
yeah, they were mentioned too.
I wonder what they were doing there.
Well, I'm guessing it's because of concerns about fuel spillage.
Environmental impact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, the investigations like this,
Yeah.
they can take a long time.
Yeah.
We're expecting a preliminary report from the NTSB
Okay.
within about 30 days.
Okay, so that'll give us some initial findings.
Right, some initial findings.
Yeah.
But the full detailed final report
Right.
could take 1 to 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a long time.
it is a long time.
Yeah.
But the NTSB has said that they're going to be looking at everything.
Everything.
The pilot's actions, the mechanical condition of the aircraft,
Yeah.
the operating environment,
So everything.
everything.
Yeah.
And the FAA has already put out a very brief statement
Okay.
saying that the crash was an accident,
Okay.
but they didn't give any information about the cause.
Of course not.
Way too early
Way too early for that.
for that.
Yeah.
So, aside from the investigation itself,
Yeah.
we've also seen some reactions
Yeah.
from the community and from officials.
Right.
Brethren Village,
Yeah.
where the crash happened,
Mm-hmm.
they released a statement
Okay.
and really emphasized
Right.
this sense of community.
Right.
They actually used the phrase "BV strong," means that It truly takes a village.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And it's really heartwarming to see
Yeah.
that kind of response.
Yeah.
In the face of something so traumatic.
Absolutely.
We also saw that Governor Shapiro
Okay.
offered the state's support
Yeah.
and resources.
To help out.
Yeah, to help out in any way needed.
Yeah.
And even President Trump commented on the incident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was asked
Yeah.
if the crash might be related to budget considerations within the Department of Transportation,
Right.
which oversees the FAA.
Yeah.
And he said very clearly
Yeah.
that it was an accident and not connected to any budget issues.
Okay.
He also acknowledged that everyone on board survived
Yeah.
and that nobody on the ground was hurt.
It is interesting to see how something like this,
Yeah.
gets attention from all these different
That's
levels.
local level all the way up to the president.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to put all this together
Okay.
into a clear timeline,
Yeah.
just so we can understand how things unfolded.
A timeline is always helpful.
It is.
Yeah.
So it all started on Sunday at approximately 3 p.m. with the plane crash itself.
Flash.
Yeah. Just 15 minutes later,
Okay.
at 3:15,
Yeah.
the call about the downed aircraft
Right.
came in to Lancaster Countywide Communications.
Okay. So the emergency response started
Exactly.
right away.
Right away.
Yeah.
And then the rest of Sunday afternoon
Mm-hmm.
was really just a whirlwind of activity.
Right. First responders.
First responders
Putting out the fire.
putting out the fire, getting those 5 people to the hospital.
Mhm.
Thankfully, Sunday evening
Yeah.
brought some good news.
Yeah.
2 of the injured people
Right.
were discharged from Lancaster General.
Okay.
So they were able to go home and start recovering.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on Monday,
Okay.
more information started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
We learned that the pilot was Matt White.
Right.
We learned about his connection to venture jets,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that the passengers were his family.
Yeah.
Sadly, those 3 people with the more serious injuries, they were transferred to the burn center.
Right.
And then we also got those official statements
Yeah.
from Brethren Village, from Governor Shapiro,
Mm-hmm.
President Trump,
Yeah.
and more details about the investigation.
Okay.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive
Yeah.
into the initial reports,
Mm-hmm.
what are the big takeaways here?
What should we be thinking about?
Yeah, what should we be thinking about?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost,
Right.
5 people were injured
Yeah.
in this plane crash.
That happened shortly after takeoff.
Shortly after takeoff.
Yeah.
And we already have some clues
Right.
that suggest there were problems during the flight,
Like the open door.
like the open door, the pull-up command from air traffic control.
Right. And those witnesses who said the plane was having trouble taking off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We also saw a really quick
Yeah.
and well-coordinated response
Yeah.
from the local emergency services.
Right.
And the federal investigators
Yeah.
were already on the case,
Yeah, they're doing their work.
doing their work, trying to figure out exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the most important thing
Yeah.
is that nobody on the ground was seriously hurt.
That is a huge relief.
It is a huge relief.
Yeah.
But, this whole event really highlights
Yeah.
how quickly things can go wrong
In aviation.
in aviation.
Yeah.
They were just taking off
Right.
on what was supposed to be a routine flight,
Yeah.
and then suddenly
Yeah.
they're dealing with an emergency.
Yeah.
So, as you think about all this,
Mm-hmm.
what does this tell you
Yeah.
about the challenges of aviation safety
Yeah.
and the complexities of these accident investigations?
What questions does this raise for you?
What questions does this raise for you?
Yeah.
Because we're really just at the beginning of this story.
Yeah.
And those official findings from the NTSB,
Right.
those are going to give us a much deeper understanding
In the coming months.
in the coming months
Yeah.
of what really happened here.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
Yeah. We'll keep you updated.
We'll keep you updated as we learn more.